Welcome to Parish and Community. Today we're talking to Director of Social Ministry, Christine Dragonette. How are you, Christine?
Doing well. How are you, Angela?
Doing well. So talk about your role. What does your life look like at College Church?
Yeah, so basically I'm full-time here as the Director of Social Ministry, and I've been here for about 5.5 years in this full-time role. And my role is basically to support the faith-based service and justice work of the parish. So I work with the Social Ministry Commission and other parish leaders to help focus and guide our justice efforts. And in practice, that looks like a lot of different things. One big aspect of it is sort of program development for our direct programs, especially our outreach program for IDs and birth certificates, and our emergency shelter, which we call Winter Inn. So a lot of building up partnerships, writing grants, growing our advocacy efforts related to IDs and birth certificates. And then another big aspect is helping to guide our justice efforts by working with parish committees that are focused on things like anti-racism, care for creation, fair trade. We're also a member congregation of Metropolitan Congregations United, MCU, so supporting that partnership and other sort of ad hoc service and justice efforts that arise.
And you are part of a whole team, right? Who else is involved in this work?
Yeah, so Tess Sanders is our part-time outreach coordinator. She's also a full-time graduate student in the School of Social Work at SLU. So she is sort of on the ground coordinating our ID and birth certificate program and Winter Inn. And we're also grateful to partner with AmeriCorps Vista. We've had a full-time AmeriCorps Vista member this will be our second year. So last year, some of you may know Sheltoria Love, who was our full-time communications development Vista. She ended her time with us in December, and we're excited that we have a new AmeriCorps Vista, Janae Davis, starting with us next week. And her role is focusing on communications, especially for those two direct programs that I talked about. We also have a SLU student, Liam John, who works with us as part of his work study hours, and he started with us as a summer associate Vista last summer, along with Carly Mansham, who is not with us this semester, but provided a lot of support last semester. And then finally, just to mention our volunteers, I think I'd be remiss not to say that volunteers really are the bread and butter of social ministry and help things to keep going.
That's been a challenge this year with the pandemic, right? How has the pandemic affected the work in social ministry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so first off, all credit to Tess and the volunteers. I was out on vacation when the pandemic first hit and a lot of decisions had to be made. So they made the wise choice to close our program initially, and then we made the decision to maintain the ID and birth certificate being closed for about 3 months. And at the beginning, there were just a lot of risks that were unknown. So we had to shut down until we could figure out how to safely reopen in mid-June. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we did lose some of our on-site regular volunteers who couldn't come back to volunteer on site and still have not been able to because of vulnerability to COVID and just some of the unknown risks. So that's really been a challenge just because our longtime volunteers, a lot of them parishioners of College Church, have really been the hands and feet of our program for so long and the heart of our program. Mm-hmm. So that's been a big loss. Many of them have continued to stay connected in offsite volunteer roles that are new since COVID. But the other challenge was recruiting new volunteers to be able to come on site once we could figure out how to reopen safely with masks and distance. Mm-hmm. And so we've done a lot of waves of volunteer recruitment. A big source of that has been at SLU. So figuring out how to reach out to SLU students, a lot of times with the help of Liam and Carly and Sheltoria last year. And knowing that SLU students' schedules change every semester, making sure we have a consistent volunteer base. The Jesuit scholastics have been such a huge help to us. They have really been able to basically make sure that we can continue to do our program. And we've also recruited some new volunteers in the community who have been really consistent and made it possible for us to continue doing the ID and birth certificate work each week. Yeah.
You mentioned off-site volunteer roles. What
Mhm.
are those looking like?
So since COVID, we have an appointment line through Google
Mm,
Voice. So we have a number that people can call that connects to different people's cell phones. So we have um, 3 volunteers who were on-site volunteers before COVID who switched to setting appointments with us.
oh, nice.
Um, we also have some volunteers who call people who have appointments
Mhm.
to remind them of their appointments the day
Nice.
before.
Good.
Those are the 2 main roles. We've also had volunteers reach out to ask how they can provide donations and other sort of organizational support in the meantime as well. So it's been a huge help.
You do have some visions though for ways to change up or expand or re-envision some aspects of the program, right? Is that you? So this you found a funding opportunity. Is that how that came about?
Yes. So I think for a while, there's been a vision and a dream of expanding our program, recognizing that we are the only program in the region that provides this level of ID and birth certificate support. And we know that it's not ideal that we would be the only location and that everything would be on site. And COVID just really highlighted that. Highlighted the reality that we are sort of a bottleneck for this service, and we're committed to continuing that. And we are reopening after our winter break next week, and we're prepared to continue to work directly with folks on site, while also recognizing that ideally ID and birth certificate support would be accessible to folks all across the region. So it's been a goal for a while to at least support the expansion of access to IDs and birth certificates. And since we have this level of expertise, I think we have a lot to offer and also a lot of great community partnerships to build off of. So this year, we went back to the Brown Sisters Foundation, which is a group that we've worked with for a couple of other grant opportunities, and applied for a challenge grant through them, which we did receive. So the Brown Sisters Foundation has provided us with a $15,000 challenge grant for us to raise $15,000 in additional funds through new and increased contributions. And the idea with that funding, it will be directed towards hiring a mobile outreach coordinator, a part-time position that will explore just that, the possibility of expanding our program and or supporting the expansion of ID and birth certificate work across the region.
Now you put a big push out to the parish around the holidays, but my understanding is that this challenge grant is still ongoing, right? So people can continue to contribute. How long does that go for?
Yeah, our goal is to reach the challenge grant by March. I'm still waiting on the numbers from Christmas, so thank you to those who have already supported. I know we had a big push for our Christmas appeal just to sustain the work that we're doing, so we really rely on the consistent support of parishioners who have always been the biggest supporters. And then we also introduced the Beyond 2020 grant, which is what we're calling our Brown Sisters Foundation grant. So there is still plenty of time to support. As we really talked about over Christmas, this is for new and increased contributions to our outreach program. So parishioners can help in a couple of different ways. One, I think the biggest one is that we're really focused in a special way on new donations, and especially people outside of the parish who may not be College Church parishioners, may not support any other part of College Church, but may be interested in this ID and birth certificate work in a particular way. And so introducing us to friends, family members, acquaintances who might support us with a first-time donation towards the Beyond 2020 $15,000 grant. And then if parishioners are also inclined to increase their contributions to social ministry, an increased donation can also go towards this challenge grant. And we want to be clear that we're not asking for parishioners to divert funds from any other part of their giving to College Church. This is mainly an ask for expanding the reach of our partnerships outside of the parish, knowing that that's the goal of this grant really, is to expand our reach outside of the parish.
Do you hear back from folks who have gotten their ID or birth certificate through this program, and what opportunities that opens up for them?
Yeah, we most often hear from people when we work with them on site before they've gotten their documents. We ask the question of everyone we work with, what do you need your documents for? Because that helps us to know what those barriers are. And always the biggest responses that we hear, the biggest one is always employment. Second is housing, public benefits, social services, education. A lot of times we'll see families needing a few birth certificates for kids so that they can enroll in school. Healthcare access, getting connected to a doctor, and financial access as well, things like cashing checks or getting access to financial services. Those are the things we hear the most. As people probably know or can imagine, needing identification, it's huge for so many things. It's really just necessary for living life. Yeah, so there's always new reasons that people need their identification.
Well, I really appreciate that there's such a work that's being done in the parish for that, and that there's some imagination being put towards how to expand that. And good luck with the challenge grant. I hope it all goes well, and we can report back on how it went, I guess in March.
Thank you.
You're welcome.